Hey, y'all, it's Sierra Waters again with another episode of Too Beautiful to Be Broken. First and foremost, today I want to say Happy Memorial Day. And I want to say thank you to all the veterans and active military for their services to all of us. We need to remember that freedom wasn't and isn't free. It cost so many men and women their lives over the years to give us what so many of us take for granted every single day. So thank you to everyone for your service, and so many of you for the lives that you lost, giving us our freedom. So this week's topic is another one that's pretty personal to me. I want to talk to you guys about PTSD and CPTSD and some ways that maybe you can deal with it if it's something that you suffer from, and maybe some ideas for your loved ones, how they can help you heal or basically just live with you, because I know it's not easy. So PTSD, like we've talked about before, is post-traumatic stress disorder. Well, CPTSD is complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and it isn't recognized in the DSM-5 yet, or the Diagnostic Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders, 5th edition. But it is diagnosed by most of the people in the mental health community. It's just not officially recognized yet as a diagnosis. So whether it's officially diagnosed or not, from my own perspective, I want to tell you that it is in fact a real diagnosis. It's also called developmental trauma. And when you've lived with it like I have, it's a lot easier to realize that it is definitely something that is real and that a lot of people deal with. So we discussed PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder. So it's defined as a disorder in which a person has difficulty recovering after experiencing or witnessing a terrifying event. The condition may last months or years, with triggers that can bring back memories of the trauma, accompanied by intense emotional and physical reactions. So that's more like something that happened to you once or maybe a couple times. I'll get into that in a minute. Let me define CPTSD. CPTSD. It's complex post-traumatic stress disorder or complex trauma disorder, and it's defined as a psychological disorder that can develop in response to prolonged, repeated experience of interpersonal trauma or in context in which the individual has little or no chance of escape. So I was told by someone once that having PTSD is you have a life before the trauma and a life after the trauma. So this happens when you've experienced a car accident, being raped, something devastating that only occurs once or maybe a couple times, but does not continue to keep happening. CPTSD is a little different. There's no life before or life after the trauma. The person who is suffering with this has really never known life without trauma. So this occurs in instances when someone suffers from abuse of any kind while growing up. It comes from systematic long-term abuse. So something that, childhood sexual abuse, childhood physical abuse, emotional abuse, mental abuse, something that continues over and over again for a long period of time. So the reason that I want to go into this today is because I want to bring to your guys' attention something that's a problem that plagues a lot of people. Almost 20% of people in the United States have some form of PTSD, and a lot of those are our soldiers or people that have seen combat. But 20% of people in the United States suffer from it, which is basically equivalent to about 44.7 million people. That's a lot of us. And keep in mind with that that's only the people that we know about. That doesn't take into account all the people that suffer every day that go undiagnosed. And since childhood physical abuse and sexual abuse is almost an epidemic in our country right now, it's really no wonder that we find ourselves here with so many people that are suffering from mental illnesses as adults. Because not only do these people have to suffer as kids, but then they also have to suffer with the repercussions of what it brings for their whole entire lives. And it's not just them that has to deal with it, it's their families as well. It basically wreaks havoc on them long term. Many people with CPTSD cannot work normal jobs. Many of them don't have or have a really hard time having any kind of normal interpersonal relationship. And a lot of them, depending on what stage they are in their healing process, have a hard time functioning through a normal day without having some sort of panic attack or flashback. I can only give you the perspective from the side of someone that suffers from CPTSD. I can't give you the side of what it's like to live with somebody with that. But I can tell you from my perspective that it's a rough place to be. Almost daily at some point, I have racing thoughts, flashbacks, some sort of anxiety attack where my face gets hot and I almost can't breathe. As I've gotten older and I'm starting to have more and more memories and flashbacks, it gets harder. Whenever I get stressed out, I get to the point where I can't breathe. My doctor has me on 2 different inhalers and 3 different allergy medications to see if that makes a difference. And it does do a lot of good, but I think that a lot of my problem is psychosomatic. I think that a lot of my not being able to breathe is directly affected by my panic attacks or my flashbacks. I know that in arguments or disagreements with the people in my life, that the flashbacks and the memories and the panic attacks come more frequently. I have more nightmares where I wake up when I can't breathe. So I know that it has to be hard for anybody that's in a relationship with me. And that's not only interpersonal relationships, but it's even parent-child relationships or friendship relationships. I know from my point of view that I drive my own self nuts half the time. So I can only imagine what the other people in my life deal with on a daily basis. So because of that, I tried to do a little research before today's podcast to see if I could figure out some things for the people that are in relationships with people that suffer from either PTSD or CPTSD, to maybe give them some ideas on how to support the person that they're with or to help them heal. So here's what I found out so far. And I hope some of this helps. If you're the one suffering from any form of this, please make sure that you have a therapist or a counselor or somebody that you can talk to on a regular basis. You may not think it's necessary, but I promise you that it is. Through my personal experience, I know that dealing with any of this kind of stuff on your own is tough. You know, we want to pretend that we're strong and that we have all the answers and that we're this tough person and, but you can't deal with it on your own. Having these conditions can lead to addictions of all kinds. So if you're suffering from any kind of addiction, seek help for that, because it can maybe help you realize why you're doing what you're doing. I know that people usually talk about only alcohol and drug addictions, but there's so many different kind of addictions. You've got gambling, you've got sex addictions, you've got eating disorders of all kinds, shopping addictions. There's so many different addictions that you can have. And for the most part, an addiction has some sort of devastating or very serious effect on your whole entire family. It's either, you harm yourself, you harm the people in your family, you spend a lot of money. I mean, there's just so many different ramifications that it can be on the whole family. So I encourage you to get help if that's the case, to try to figure out where it's coming from and maybe help you figure out how to not do it or cut down on it some. I have my own set of addictions, so I get it. We need to utilize the internet and Google and look up articles and resources that are available to us at any level or any form or any place you are in either PTSD or CPTSD. There's so many places that you can go or reach out to for help. It doesn't have to be someplace you go to. There's places online, there's blogs, there's support groups that you can meet online. So there's a lot of different places that you can reach out to get help. So and if you really need to talk to somebody, please feel free to reach out to me at either cr.waters@aol.com or 951-208-4709. I will answer calls, or I will answer. You can leave a message on that number and I will respond. It's important that you have some place to go or somebody to talk to when it comes to this kind of stuff. On your good days, and believe me, on your good days, you're going to want to make sure that you let your significant other know how much they mean to you, how much that you appreciate them putting up with you, them being there for your bad days, for your healing, because those bad days sometimes can be really ugly, and I think that we put our significant others through so much more than we probably need to, but we don't always have a lot of control over that. Make sure on bad days that you don't hold on to any guilt or feelings of shame that you may have because of how you're acting. It's easy to put blame on yourself or to feel shame for the way that you're acting. And you need to remember that where you are is not necessarily your fault. And you need to make sure that you communicate these things to your significant other so that they know what one of your bad days look like, how it feels to be in one of your bad days, how for them to kind of understand where you are so that they can maybe see one coming, maybe help you not have such a bad day. Another thing you need to do is not worry about past events or what may come in the future. You can't change anything in the past, and worrying about your future isn't going to change it at this point. So do your best to stay present where you are at the moment and for the immediate 24 hours to follow. It's important for you, it's important for your significant other that you're present where you are at that moment. And healing, if you're centered in the moment, it's easier for you to heal and for your significant other to see more clearly where you are. So like I was saying, go on the internet, go on Google, find some support groups. Facebook has a lot of them. Online, offline, friends, your pastor, your pastor's wife. I mean, there's so many places that you can go to look for help to figure some of this stuff out. Now, if you're a partner of someone with any form of PTSD or CPTSD, I'm going to try to give you some guidelines, at least that I found. But I know from personal experience that when I'm having a bad day or I'm acting a certain way, that it's hard for anybody in my life to deal with me. I can be witchy, attitude, mouthy, fall apart, cry, and half the time it goes from one to the other, here to there, all over the place, where I can't even follow what I'm doing half the time. So if you can maybe get some of this into play, it may make it easier, make some of the times easier. So if your significant other does not have a good therapist, please help them find one, because it's important. And then if they do have one, please encourage them to go on a regular basis, because it kind of helps you keep yourself going in the right direction. Build a support system for yourself. You can use the internet and Google too. And there's so many support groups for people with PTSD that you can find, because family members need support from somebody too, to let them know that they're not alone. Take time and care for yourself. Be healthy, relaxation, a little alone time. You're basically at this point in the role of caregiver for your significant other. And even if it's only mentally or emotionally, or just being there when they're having a bad day, for a shoulder to cry on, it's draining. It's draining for me being in it, so I can only imagine how draining it is for anybody in my life. So please remember to take care of yourself. This one is key, and probably one of the harder things. Let go of any resentment or negative feelings that you may have towards your significant other. I know it's frustrating dealing with somebody that is going through this, because they're so up and down and all over the place, and it's hard. But try to keep in mind that it's not their fault that they're suffering with this. When you're having a bad day, it's as if something takes over your mind. And actually, something did. Your flashbacks, your memories, your fears, your insecurities, they take over your mind and your mouth and your emotions and every part of you. When you suffer with this, you can have physical ramifications. It can make you sick. So many physical ailments come from emotional issues. And when you have any form of PTSD, it wreaks havoc on your health. So another thing you can do is make yourself familiar with the things that trigger your partner. So sit down, talk to them, let them know that you want to help, and ask them if they know what triggers them, or pay attention and watch and maybe see what you may observe as triggers. And keep in mind, depending on where your significant other is at this point, they may not know exactly what their triggers are yet. I know that I've been dealing with this stuff for a really long time. I've been in therapy, I've been medicated, and all that kind of stuff. And there's still things that trigger me that I don't expect to trigger me. I don't know if it's a combination of things or what it is, but there's still things that trigger me that I don't know are going to. Sometimes when you're in the moment, it's hard to see what exactly it was. So educate yourself on the best and worst case scenarios. Don't wait until something bad happens or until symptoms get so out of control that it's hard for you to figure out what started it, how to end it, what you can do to support, how you can be there, how you can pretty much not lose your mind dealing with this kind of stuff. Encourage your significant other to express grief and anger if they need to. Encourage them to express how they feel at the moment that it's happening. If you can get them in the moment and present with you at that time and get them to think about what they're feeling, it may be easier for them to figure out how to get out of it at that time. The more they feel safe and accepted by you, the more they'll share with you. The very biggest thing at this point is to validate the emotions that they're having as real. Tell them you understand. Open up space at that point for them to express how they feel with you in a place where they feel safe and accepted. See, and this one's really hard for me. I always thought that if someone got to know the real me, they wouldn't love me or even like me. I've never felt good enough for anyone, even my kids. So I've always fought to be better, to be enough. I've done everything for everyone, hoping that anyone would love me. Those things can be helped a little bit by the people in your life reminding you, one, that you don't have to be perfect for them or anyone else. Two, that everyone makes mistakes. We're all imperfect and mistakes can be fixed. Three, that they are lovable and worthy right now, in that moment, and always. And there's nothing that needs to be done to make you any more worthy or lovable. And four, if something's wrong, let them know that if something's wrong, that you'll talk about it, you'll fix it, and that you can work through anything as long as you do it together. People need to remember that when you're suffering with PTSD, you need to know those things. You know, most people should know them without being told. These are things that should be stuck in your head from what you learned growing up. But a person with PTSD doesn't know those things. The message that plays in their head every day says exactly the opposite. It's ingrained in their core. The negative beliefs became part of who they were as they were growing up. So you're not going to be able to say it to them once, and you're not going to be able to say it to them twice. Those things are things they're going to need to hear all the time. When they need to talk, you need to be willing to listen. Even if you don't really want to hear what they're saying, even if you know what they're going to say is going to be tough for you to hear, or you're not in the mood, or it's not a good time, please listen anyway. Because so many of us that have been through things that lead us to suffering from CPTSD have never felt like we had a voice. And we need to know we do. Let these people vent about what they're feeling or what they're thinking without trying to fix it. Just listen. A lot of times, they don't need you to fix it. They just need you to know. And sometimes that's hard, especially for men, I think, because men are fixers. But sometimes, I know for me, sometimes I don't need it fixed. I just need to be heard. Give them permission to be imperfect. For some, I know me being one of them, being perfect was a way of coping with what we went through. A lot of people think that they have to be perfect to be loved or be lovable. They do and do and do for others until there's nothing left. And I promise you, it is an exhausting way to live. Whenever you get a chance, make sure you show your love and appreciation for your significant other. See, due to the depression and feelings of inadequacy that come with PTSD or CPTSD, their self-esteem plummets. You walk around constantly feeling like you're not good enough. So they need reminders that they're needed, wanted, and admired. And they need those reminders often. There's a book called The Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder Relationship by Diane England, and it's available on Amazon. If you get a chance, read it. It'll kind of give you a new perspective on what your significant other's going through. See, CPTSD is much worse than simple PTSD. There'll be more bad days than goods. You'll feel like there's nothing you can do to help. See, because CPTSD influences the way that your significant other perceives the world. And it affects your relationship in a negative way because they feel disassociated from everything and everybody a lot of the time. They have difficulty regulating their emotions. 1 minute you're up, 1 minute you're down, 1 minute you don't really know how you feel. They have a negative self-perception. When you look at yourself in the mirror, when you think about yourself, the only things that play in your head are negative. I'm not good enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm unlovable. I'll never be loved. I'll never be good enough for anybody. I'll never be enough, period. The world would be better if I wasn't here. I'm not perfect, so nobody can love me. I can never do enough. No matter what I do, it's never enough. Which kind of makes it difficult to relate to others. They have a distorted view of what happened. Which in a lot of ways and a lot of times makes you lose faith or hope in almost anything and everything. Makes your faith in God really, really hard because you struggle with feeling like you're not good enough, and if nobody else will love you, well, why would God love you? All of these kind of things are hard in a normal life and in a normal relationship. With CPTSD, It's very hard. Things in relationships with somebody with CPTSD a lot of times can only be fixed in therapy. One of the biggest things for someone like this is communication. Communication is a huge, huge, huge part of making these relationships work. So you may never feel like your relationship will be normal. But I tell you, it can and will be if you can hang in there. If you can support and stand behind your significant other and make them feel safe and like they're not damaged material. If you can make them feel loved and lovable and needed and like they matter to someone, to anyone. Most of these people have a capacity to love. That a lot of people don't understand. A lot of these people have beautiful souls, and you'll probably be in a relationship with somebody like you've never been in a relationship with anybody before in your life. But they need to feel all that stuff. And you think that it's as simple as just, okay, well, I'll tell him and it'll be done. Or I told you last week, or I told you yesterday, or I told you 5 minutes ago, or I told you, 10 times today. And as much as I'd like to tell you that you've done everything you need to do, it doesn't always work that way. Because when you're having a crisis or a moment or something's triggered you or you're just having a bad day, you may need to hear it 20 times, or you may need to hear it 50 times, or you may need to hear it 3 times in 5 minutes. But I promise you, if you hang in there and you love and support and stand behind, it'll be worth it in the end. This is a really hard subject, and I'm sorry if I'm a little long-winded tonight. I hope that anybody listening that's going through this hears it and gets some relief or some understanding out of what I said. Please contact me if you have any questions or comments. If you like my podcast, please don't forget to like it or subscribe. Until next week, please be safe. Good night and God bless.